Welcome to Astrology, the podcast that brings you knowledge, wisdom, and principles that can help you find the peace and comfort we all seek and deserve in our lives. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Astrology. The topic today, naturally, this podcast is going to start with astrology. Whenever I'm around people and I even mention or ask, I'm known for asking, what sign are you? And I get so tickled when people actually know what their sign is. And then the next thing is, some people say, I don't really know and understand much about it. And if you were to Google astrology, there's so much information that comes up that it's so tough to follow. So what I'm attempting to do today is trying to break it down so that people can understand, because again, it's actually more simple than people actually realize. Astrology is the study of how the planets affect us here on Earth. So one of the analogies that I like to use when I think about the study of how the planets affect us here on Earth, the moon is one of the planets that as human species, we're very familiar with the moon, right? So mariners, surfers, weathermen, all of them, they watch the moon, especially fishermen, to see what the tides are doing on the Earth. So they set sail and they watch the tides to see how the water is going to affect them, because they know that the moon affects how the water moves in the ocean. So I'm like, if people can understand that, they can understand that astrology is a study of how the planets affect us here on Earth. And if we remember that everything in the universe is energy, our words, our actions, our thoughts are included. So everything around us, the trees, the birds, the sky, ether, air, the tangible and the intangible, are tied to how we feel and how we operate in life. So the study of astrology is the movement and the relative positions of the planets that influence us as human beings. And it also is said to influence the natural world. I mean, we see animals, birds, cats, dogs acting differently when there's a full moon. We see that. It is a practice that also uses the positions of the heavenly bodies, such as the sun, the moon, planets, and also constellations. What astrology does, it attempts to predict how the events of the future might unfold. So it's not saying that it's an absolute predict. So when I think of astrology from a practical perspective, it reminds me of my corporate when we would have to forecast numbers. We would have to do projections on what we would think. So if we're sitting in January, I might have to do a projection for the whole year through June. I'd have to project out each and every month. And when you think of economics, economics is based on the idea of coming up with possibilities and probabilities. Both of those things are based on your best guesstimate. And that best guesstimate is what? Based on data from current and historical information, so that you can create the best hypotheses on what is going to happen. So I find it hysterical that people are like, oh, astrology's not this and astrology's not spot on. It's, so are a lot of things in life, just as I just said. So are forecasting, and the whole economic world relies on possibility and probabilities. So the idea that planetary bodies in the sky solar system can provide a look into the future has fascinated civilization for a very long time. Back in the day, our ancestors' looked to the stars and the sky for information and to track time. Astrology is a method. Think of it as a predictor of the everyday mundane events that makes the assumption that the celestial bodies of the planets and the stars affect us. And so this can be based on arbitrary combinations of the constellations, so the sun, the moon, and the stars, and where they sit in the sky. There are three main types of astrology. There's Western, which is also called tropical. There's Vedic astrology, and also Chinese astrology. So today we're going to break down Western astrology. Western astrology is based on the date and time of birth. It's based on 12 symbols or signs that are used to communicate specific meaning. So here are the key elements that define Western astrology. The Greeks and the Babylonians are credited for bringing astrology to the forefront. Approximately, they say around 2,000 to 3,000 years ago. So it's old. The sun, based on the Greeks and Babylonians, was considered the center of the solar system, and therefore they believed that its relationship with the earth was vital that we understand. Like, what is this connection with the sun, moon? Because if everything revolves around the sun, we need to understand this. It is the Western, also aka tropical zodiac, that measures the approximate distances and closest of the sun to the earth, called tropics. Everybody knows about the equator, the Arctic Circle, the Antarctic Circle, etc., etc. So the equator swings around the Earth's belly. It's considered to go around the girdle of the Earth. The Arctic Circle swings around the top of the Earth near Santa, and the Antarctic Circle, of course, is closer to the penguins of the South Pole. Let's talk about tropics. A tropic is based on where the sun was stationed based on each calendar day. Based on 2,000 plus years ago. So we've heard of the term, has anyone heard of the term, the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn? So the Tropic of Cancer is a circle of latitude located approximately 23.5 degrees north of the equator. So then that would make the Tropic of Capricorn a circle of latitude located approximately 23.5 degrees south of the equator. Okay? Enough on that, because I could go on about that. But there are 12 Western signs: the ram, the bull, the twins, the crab, lion, virgin, scales, scorpion, centaur, sea goat, water bearer, and fish. The 12 signs, one for each month of the year, are based on constellations. Constellations are positions relative to the earth. And these constellations, according to Greek mythology, they were based on Greek mythology. And it is believed that depending on the month we were born, it ties back to that Greek myth. And that Greek myth is saying that we have similar traits to that mythology depending on the month we were born. The Western astrology calendar is easy to follow because it's like a normal calendar year that is based on the Earth's orbit around the sun. So 12 months, it takes a year for the sun to rotate around. So oftentimes in the astrological world, people will say happy solar return versus happy birthday, because a solar return is where the sun started on the day you were born. It takes 1 year to rotate and return back to that exact place on your birthday. So Western zodiac star signs are known as sun signs. Because remember, again, the sun is the center of the universe, right? So a zodiac sign is a symbol that represents your personality, your emotions, and what motivates you. In astrology, now this is what I find interesting, the new year begins in spring during the vernal equinox. So during the vernal equinox, there are equal parts for day and for night. And this is when the new year begins in the astrology world. In our Western mind and world, it starts in January. And it said that this was ordained that the new year would start in January by a Roman emperor who made January the beginning of the calendar year. But it has nothing to do with astrology. I like to say we get 2 new years in a year. We can do the January, and then we do March. March to me, and when you look at Kabbalah, when you think of it, January and February are still part of winter. They are not spring. So spring springs new offerings, right? Those seeds pop up from the ground, so it's new. So it kind of makes sense that the new year would start towards the end of March when spring is springing, right? Aries is considered the first sign in astrology. So Aries is the number 1 sign. It begins the wheel, and then the other signs proceed in consecutive order. Constellations and planets play the biggest role in Western astrology. So Western astrology is concerned mostly with planets and constellations. And it is believed that they symbolize rudimentary motivations in our human psyche. The two moon nodes are the north, which is ascending node, and the south ascending node. So again, astrology looks at how all of this stuff affects our emotions, our behaviors, our patterns here on Earth. There are 7 classical planets in astrology that astrologers call the 7 personal and social planets. And it is believed that they represent our human drive. So the personal planets are the sun, the moon, Mercury, Venus, and Mars. And then the social planets are Jupiter and Saturn. And these are the areas that we look at in a chart. So if someone says, where's your Venus? Where's your Mercury? Where's your moon? You know that they're looking for personal aspects about you. The social planet, so Jupiter is a planet of expansion, and it's a planet of abundance. So based on where it's located in your chart is going to predicate how you act and respond to abundance and manifestation, so to speak, right? The other thing, lastly, just to tap off the conversation, is underpinning the planets and the constellation, there are 4 elements that are also called out in Western astrology. And each of the signs are associated with one of them. So we have water signs. Water signs are considered to be more emotional. We have earth signs. Earth signs are considered to be more grounded, more practical, more linear. We have fire signs, and fire signs are spontaneous, and they're considered more adventurous, and they're the people that go for it. And then there are air signs. Air signs are considered more intellectual and more cerebral. So I hope this talk on astrology helps you to understand a little bit more of that. It's actually simpler to understand than we realize. And astrology, learning your sun, your moon, and your rising sign, which we'll break those down in later talks, is vital to you understanding. You know, they say, know thyself, learn thyself. To me, in order to do that, astrology is yet another tool that can help us do that. Thank you so much for listening, and have a wonderful day. Thank you for listening to Astrology. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to help support the podcast, please hit the subscribe button and tell your friends about it by sharing this program on social media. You can also follow me on Instagram at Coda Life Goddess or at CodaLife.com. Coda is C-O-T-A, Coda Life Goddess or CodaLife.com. Thank you again for listening to Astrology, and I'll see you next time.